So let's get a little closer to our question, what is art? And we figured out that it is an ontological question. We're questioning the existence of it. How is this a work of art? And then the epistemological part of it, how do I know when I encounter this? And it might be from the honorific actions, seeing someone put it on a pedestal, seeing that it's been put in books, seeing that it's kept in museums, and the institution might have also told us, this is important. We want to pay attention to this work. Now, the question, what is art, is an important question to young artists because they struggle with it, because they're wanting to know, how do I change this institution? How do I move it forward? So in order to move art forward, I need to know what art is. What do I think it is? What is the institution that I believe in? And how do I, as an artist, become part of the institution that moves this forward? Young artists have to always reconcile this. And art goers struggle with this question when they go into museums and they find works of art that challenge us. And I'm always fascinated by the works of art that have shaken up the world and made us look at it differently. Now, whether we like the work of art or not, that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is, when I look at a work that shakes up the world, how does that tell me about what this world of art is? Now, the history of art is filled with works that challenge us. I sometimes think that some people call them brilliant and some people call them aesthetic abominations. That how can this be a work of art? They shake up the world. So in this lecture, in this video, I want to show you an artist who did just this, who took the world and shook it up. Let's start with a dance artist, and then we'll move to a visual work of art that's perhaps better known by the overall dance or the overall art world. This is Rudy Perez. In 1966, Rudy Perez did a dance called Countdown. And he challenged what a dance was because he sat down and he smoked a cigarette during this dance. There were no dance movements. It was just a human being sitting on a stool, sometimes standing, sometimes doing some simple gestures, but smoking a cigarette while two French songs played in the background. Now, some people will call this a dance of extreme simplicity and touching on real sadness. But other people screamed, this is not dance. There wasn't a single recognizable dance step in this work. In the visual art world, this is Marcel Duchamp. In 1915, he made a very strange work. He went to a hardware store and he bought a snow shovel. And on it he wrote, "In advance of a broken arm." Now, some of you will look at this idea and say, well, he didn't make the snow shovel. He just bought it, and all he did was write on it. So how could this be a work of art? How could something ready-made be a work that he created? Now, Duchamp's most famous work is this. It's called Fountain. In 1917, he entered an art show that was at the Armory in New York City. And what he did was he bought a commercially manufactured porcelain white urinal. He placed it on its back. He placed it on a pedestal. He signed it, not with his name, but the name R. Mutt, and he called the work Fountain. Now, some of you might say, how can this be a work of art? And the art world said this at that time also. You know, they actually took the work of art out of the show, but this work of art did not go away. This work of art challenged what we think about art, because people thought, again, here's a ready-made object. And did he do enough by just simply placing it and signing it? We'll explore that a little bit more when we get to the topic of creativity. This sent up some aesthetic confusions. And in some of the ways that we've already explored, there was this ontological question: what is art? Because if I know what art is, how can this urinal be a work of art? Most people don't encounter a urinal and think work of art. They think utilitarian object. Yeah. Now, there's also the epistemological question. If this is a work of art, how do I know if something is art? And then the institutional question: who decides this? Who decides if something is a work of art or not? Marcel Duchamp, the artist, told us this is a work of art. And eventually the art world recognized it. There are examples of fountain that still exist. One is in London, at the Tate Modern Museum. Another is in San Francisco at the Museum of Modern Art at MoMA, San Francisco. There's also the honorific action. Duchamp honored this urinal. Was that enough for us? Let's now cut 100 years later, 2017. And we have a new chapter to this story of Duchamp that comes from another artist, Maurizio Cattelan. This is the Guggenheim Museum in New York. Famous museum. I would show this slide to you in class and I would ask, who knows who designed this museum, this piece of architecture, famous piece of American architecture, the Guggenheim Museum. You can see here, the circular part is a spiral. If we look on the inside of the museum, you can see you can ascend the stairs, and then as you walk and look at art, you can spiral all the way through this rotunda, all the way from the bottom to the top, looking at works of art as you go. Some of these pictures here show an Agnes Martin show. She's a very minimalist abstract artist with these very white paintings. Yeah. This is Frank Lloyd Wright's space. Frank Lloyd Wright designed the New York Guggenheim Museum. This is Maurizio Cattelan's show from 2012. In 2012, Cattelan was given the Rotunda for a show. Now, at the Guggenheim, when an artist gets the Rotunda, it is a seminal moment. It is a moment sometimes for a young artist that they have now become part of the institution of art. The art world acknowledges them with an entire show in this Guggenheim Rotunda spiral. Cattelan here was given a retrospective that he would show his sculpture work. Now, what's interesting in 2012, Cattelan is a very dramatic artist, that he did a couple things that were quite amazing in this show, and perhaps shocking. Yeah. One thing is, if you look at this picture, you can see that none of the artwork was hung in the spiral. Instead, he hung it in the empty space in the middle of the spiral. So you could look at the works as you went up. And these were all sculptures that he's made throughout his career as an artist, as a sculptor in 2012. He was also dramatic because in 2012, he declared that this was going to be his last show. This was his swan song, and he was done being an artist. Yeah. Now, what's interesting is during this time in this museum, let me show you one other picture of the museum. Here's another picture of the spiral. And if you can look, there's a part as you spiral up, where you can, if you're not, if you're have some disability, you can take an elevator to various parts. Some people actually like to take the elevator up to the top of the spiral and then mosey their way down on the spiral here. But also by the elevator, these are the restrooms. And I'll show you one of the restrooms. Here's just a typical restroom in the Guggenheim Museum. You can see there's solo places, a place where you can decide to go use the facilities while you're moseying up the spiral. Now, what's interesting about this is Catalan, I think, probably used the facility, and then he decided he was fascinated with this space and that he wanted to come out of retirement and make one more work of art for this space. And you can see here's the placard for it. And in 2016, he made a piece called America. And in 2016, this piece of America. And you can see when we talked about this work, I said the placard might say ceramic. You can see here that it's gold. The material of the piece is gold. And here's the piece that he made. What Catalan did was he had a gold toilet, exactly like the one at the Guggenheim Museum manufactured. This was a working toilet, and a toilet that you could use while you were at the museum. So patrons could line up and could use the gold toilet. This was solid gold. Now, we can speculate as to how much it cost to make this piece. The material itself is in the millions for this. And if you touch the toilet and lift the seat, which you're not supposed to do, but by mistake I did, and I did because I wasn't told that I wasn't supposed to do. Afterwards, the guard told me, oh, you shouldn't have, I should have told you not to do that. But what I realized is how heavy gold is in this amount and this quantity. I never touched gold, this much gold. And the seat is magnetized down. So this piece was designed to sit, not to lift the seat, as many men would do in here. Now, this is another, what was fascinating to me about my encounter with this work was this. 100 years later, we have a piece that's reminiscent of Duchamp. But here, we have a different relationship with the object. We're now using the object in a utilitarian way, and we're having even a more intimate relationship than what Duchamp had us do with the urinal. Catalan was pushing the needle forward 100 years later with this piece. Yeah, it made quite a stir in the art world. I was lucky enough to be in New York to be able to visit this work of art and actually spend time alone with it, which was also interesting that you would go into this space and be alone with the work of art. Most works of art in museums, they don't allow you to be alone with in this way. So that too was quite different. This work has a continued history because rather recently, it was stolen. It was taken and installed in Blenheim Castle in the UK. And while it was there, someone robbed the castle and they stole this toilet, this gold toilet. Chances are right now it's gone. The work of art has been melted down for its materials, which probably were to the people who encountered it more important than trying to have the object itself. One final piece of Catalan, because if you look him up Maurizio Catalan, you'll see he also stirred up the art world recently. At the Venice Biennial in Miami, he took a banana and he taped it with duct tape to a wall, and he called this a work of art. So again, it shook the world up with this work. And actually, this piece is also gone because another performance artist decided to take the banana off the wall and eat the banana. So it too shook it up. Now, I like pieces like this. Now, you can ask me, are these my favorite pieces of art? No, they're not. They're not. I think I prefer Van Gogh more. And I probably prefer this Greek lithos to the gold toilet. But there's something about an artist who takes a work and challenges the institution. Almost like when you take a snow globe and you shake it all up, and then everything has to find a way to settle back down. And when it settles down, the world can be different within that snow globe. And so often that's what artists do.